Most people think life changes when you make your first $100,000. But the truth? For many people, everything actually starts changing much earlier, around $20,000. Not because it makes you rich, but because it changes the way your brain sees money. And once that shift happens, nothing feels the same again. Here's the strange part most people never talk about. The moment someone crosses $20,000 in savings or income momentum, something psychological happens. Their decisions change. Their risks change. Even the people around them start treating them differently. And what happens next can either accelerate your financial life or quietly destroy it. In this video, we're going to break down the hidden psychological turning point that happens around $20K, why so many people lose momentum right after reaching it, and how the people who eventually reach six figures think completely differently at this stage. Because there's a pattern, a very predictable one. Some people hit $20K, and within a few years they're earning $200,000 plus. Others hit the same point, and somehow end up right back at zero. Same starting point, completely different futures. So what's the difference? It isn't luck. It isn't intelligence. And it definitely isn't working harder. It's a mindset shift that almost nobody notices while it's happening. And once you see it, you'll never look at money the same way again. But first, you need to understand why $20,000 is the most dangerous financial milestone most people ever reach. The first time someone reaches $20,000, something dangerous happens. They relax, not intentionally, but psychologically. Up until that point, money feels fragile, temporary, like it could disappear at any moment. So people hustle harder. They save more aggressively. They avoid stupid purchases. But once the number hits $20,000, the brain starts whispering something subtle. You're doing fine now. And that whisper quietly changes behavior. Spending becomes easier. Risks become impulsive. People start rewarding themselves for progress that hasn't actually secured their future yet. Think about it. How many times have you heard someone say, "I finally saved some money, so I upgraded my car." Or, "I worked hard this year, so I deserve a better apartment." But here's the brutal truth. At $20,000, you're not financially safe. Not even close. In the United States or the UK, a single unexpected emergency can wipe that out in months. Medical bills, job loss, family emergencies. Suddenly that safety cushion disappears. And the people who celebrated too early find themselves starting over. But something even more interesting happens to another group of people. Instead of relaxing, they become more focused than ever. They stop seeing $20,000 as an achievement. They start seeing it as proof of a system working. And that tiny shift creates a completely different financial trajectory. Because what they do next looks almost boring. But it's the exact behavior that quietly builds wealth. And it begins with one simple realization most people miss. The people who build real wealth don't celebrate $20,000. They study it. They ask one powerful question most people never ask. How did this happen? Not emotionally, systematically. Was it consistent saving? A side hustle? Investments? Better spending habits? Because when you understand the system that created your first $20K, you unlock something far more valuable than the money itself. You unlock repeatability. Most people treat money like luck. Wealth builders treat it like math. If a system produced $20,000 once, it can produce $20,000 again, and again, and again. Suddenly, the number stops being impressive. It becomes predictable. And predictable money is where everything starts changing. Imagine this. Someone saves $20,000 over 2 years. Average person reaction? Finally, I made it. Wealth builder reaction? If I did this in 2 years, how do I do it in 1? Now the brain is playing a completely different game. Optimization, leverage, efficiency. That's when people start looking at things differently. Their job, their time, their skills, their income ceiling. And this is the moment where a quiet but powerful shift begins. Because once someone realizes they can engineer money instead of chasing it, the next goal stops being $30,000 or even $50,000. The next real target becomes something far bigger, $100,000. But here's the twist. The path from $20,000 to $100,000 isn't what most people think. In fact, the biggest mistake people make during this stage actually slows them down. When people reach $20,000, they often believe the next step is simple. Work harder, save more, grind longer. But this is exactly where many people get stuck for years. Because the strategy that helped you reach $20K usually won't take you to $100,000. Here's why. Most early savings come from discipline, cutting expenses, budgeting, being careful. But scaling wealth requires something completely different. Leverage. And this is where things start getting uncomfortable. Because leverage forces you to ask difficult questions. Is your job paying what your skills are worth? Could a side skill double your income? Are your savings just sitting still instead of working for you? For many people, the honest answers are painful. They realize they've been playing financial defense, not offense, saving pennies, while ignoring opportunities that could multiply their income. But the moment someone understands this, everything changes. They stop obsessing over saving $5 here and $10 there. Instead, they ask a terrifying but powerful question. What action could increase my income by $10,000 a year? Suddenly, the game is different. New skills, new opportunities, new risks. And the people who make this shift start moving faster financially than they ever imagined. But here's the surprising part. The real power of $20,000 isn't the money itself. It's what it does to your confidence. Because once someone proves they can build that first financial foundation, they start believing something dangerous. Maybe, just maybe, they're capable of building something much bigger. And that belief is where the real transformation begins. Confidence is the hidden currency of money, and the first $20,000 quietly builds it. Before that point, many people secretly doubt themselves. They wonder if financial success is only for other people. Different backgrounds, different connections, different luck. But when someone reaches $20,000 through their own effort, something powerful happens. The narrative changes. Suddenly, the thought becomes, if I did this once, maybe I can do more. This moment seems small, but psychologically, it's massive. Because belief changes behavior, and behavior changes outcomes. People start negotiating salaries, launching side projects, investing for the first time, learning about assets instead of just expenses, and each step expands their financial world. But here's the twist most people don't expect. This stage is also where fear starts showing up. Not fear of failure, fear of losing progress. Once someone has $20K, they become protective, overly cautious, sometimes even paralyzed. What if I lose it? What if I invest and it crashes? What if I make the wrong move? And this fear creates one of the biggest hidden traps in personal finance. People stop moving. They sit on their progress. Months pass, then years. And that $20,000 that once felt powerful quietly loses value to inflation, rising costs, and missed opportunities. But a small group of people respond to fear differently. Instead of freezing, they learn. And learning leads them to a surprising discovery about money that changes everything. Around the middle of most financial journeys, a shocking realization appears. Saving money alone does not build wealth. It preserves stability. But wealth? That comes from ownership. Ownership of investments. Ownership of assets. Ownership of systems that produce income even when you're not working. And this is the turning point where the story changes. Because the people who move beyond $20,000 start shifting from saving money to deploying money. At first, it feels uncomfortable. Investing in stocks, starting a business, buying assets. There's uncertainty, risk, doubt. But history shows something fascinating. The people who patiently invest even small amounts consistently often end up miles ahead of people who simply hoard cash. Why? Because money that moves multiplies. Money that sits still slowly shrinks. Inflation quietly eats it. Opportunities pass by. Time slips away. And time is the most powerful wealth multiplier that exists. Think about this. What happens if $20,000 compounds for 20 years? The number becomes something completely different. Something most people never imagine when they first save it. But here's the real twist. The biggest advantage isn't the money. It's the mindset shift that comes with it. Because once someone starts thinking like an investor, they stop trading time for money. They start building systems. And systems are where true financial freedom begins. But the road from $20,000 to real wealth still hides one more psychological trap. There's a strange phase that happens after someone builds early financial momentum. Experts sometimes call it the plateau zone. This is where progress slows down. Motivation fades. And many people start wondering if the effort is even worth it. Because early money milestones feel exciting. First $1,000. First $5,000. First $20,000. Each one feels like climbing a mountain. But after that, growth becomes quieter, less dramatic, more gradual. And that lack of excitement tricks the brain into believing nothing is happening. But behind the scenes, something extremely powerful is building. Momentum. Money compounds. Skills compound. Experience compounds. Relationships compound. And those invisible forces quietly prepare people for their next major breakthrough. Here's a question most people never ask themselves. What if the difference between someone stuck financially and someone who becomes wealthy is simply who stayed consistent during the boring phase? Because wealth rarely explodes overnight. It builds quietly, then suddenly. And the people who survive the plateau phase often experience something shocking. Their progress suddenly accelerates. Opportunities appear. Income grows faster. Investments start producing noticeable returns. But this only happens for people who continue moving forward even when it feels slow. And this leads to the most surprising realization about money most people learn after $20,000. By the time someone has spent enough time building their finances, another truth becomes impossible to ignore. Money isn't just numbers. It's behavior. Two people can earn the same income, have the same opportunities, even start with the same $20,000. Yet 10 years later, their lives look completely different. One struggles paycheck to paycheck. The other owns investments, assets, and financial freedom. So what changed? Daily decisions, small habits, tiny financial choices repeated thousands of times. Skipping unnecessary purchases, investing consistently, improving skills, avoiding lifestyle inflation. None of these actions feel dramatic in the moment, but over years, they reshape entire futures. And this is why the $20,000 milestone matters so much. Because it forces people to confront their financial identity. Are they someone who consumes money, or someone who builds money? One path leads to temporary comfort. The other leads to lasting security. And the people who truly understand this stop chasing flashy wealth signals. They focus on quiet financial strength, assets, cash flow, freedom. But there's one final psychological transformation that happens to people who truly master this stage. And it completely changes how they see money forever. Eventually, something unexpected happens. Money stops being the main goal. At first, this sounds strange. After all, the entire journey started because of money. But once people build stability, their priorities shift. They start valuing something even more powerful. Control. Control over time. Control over decisions. Control over life direction. Suddenly, money becomes a tool instead of a trophy. A tool that buys freedom. Freedom from toxic jobs. Freedom from financial anxiety. Freedom to make choices without desperation. And ironically, this mindset often leads to even greater financial success. Because decisions become smarter, less emotional, less impulsive. People stop trying to impress others with expensive lifestyles. They focus on long-term strength instead. And that's when something amazing happens. Their financial progress starts accelerating again. Investments grow. Income expands. Opportunities multiply. But it all started from a seemingly small milestone. A simple $20,000 turning point. A number that forced them to think differently about money, risk, and the future. And when we connect all these pieces together, the real lesson becomes incredibly clear. But there's one final idea that ties everything in this story together. So why does everything change after $20,000? Not because it's a huge amount of money, but because it's the first time many people prove something to themselves. That financial progress is possible. And once that belief appears, a new path opens. Some people stop there. They celebrate early, spend the progress, and slowly drift back to where they started. But others see the milestone differently. They treat it as evidence, proof that systems work, habits work, discipline works. And if those systems created $20K, they can create $50,000, $100,000, even far beyond that. The number itself was never the magic. The mindset was. The shift from reacting to money to designing how money flows into your life. That's when everything changes. Not overnight, but permanently. And here's something I'm curious about. If you suddenly had $20,000 today, would you spend it, save it, or invest it? Comment the word 20 if you made it all the way to the end. Because the people who stay curious about money are usually the same people who eventually master it. And if you want more deep dives into the psychology of wealth, money habits, and financial freedom, make sure you subscribe. Because the next financial breakthrough most people miss is even more surprising than this one.